Siddhant and Laka, let's talk about She-Hulk episode 4. Is this not real magic? I'm David Chen. You're listening to Decoding TV. Let's talk about overall thoughts on the episode. What do you think of this episode of the show?
This is the first one in the season where I had a blast from start to finish. No real complaints. Like this is where I think the show kind of comes into its own as it's a half-hour comedy, and this is it's an episode of a sitcom basically. And I laughed again so hard throughout this episode. There's minimal like actual She-Hulk, so I have very few complaints about the visual effects. And yeah, I had a very good time.
Yeah, I thought it's a lot of fun, and obviously Wong comes back in this episode, and he's always a great time.
Excuse me, it's Wongers.
Yes, I'm really loving Wongers in this this series. One thing that's been interesting to kind of reflect on is how subsequent Marvel films and or TV shows try to fill in gaps that are left unfilled by the earlier movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think developing the character of Wong has really been done a lot of favors by both Multiverse of Madness as well as this show. So anyway, let's talk about a couple of specific scenes, and then we can discuss the main plot lines overall. But the episode begins in a completely unfamiliar place. So it's like a total cold open. We have no idea where we are. There's a magician named Donnie Blaze who is trying to do a magic show, but it's not very impressive. So he takes out the portal ring and starts like transporting people from the audience into other dimensions, including Madison, which has spelled with 2 N's and 1 Y, but it's not where you think. So she gets sent to a different dimension, and then she gets eventually teleported to where Wong is, which I think is at the Kamertage, right?
Yeah, in Kathmandu.
Yeah, and you hear the Sopranos theme song, and he's doing a rewatch of The Sopranos. I guess this is his first time, actually, so it's not a rewatch of The Sopranos. He's watching Sopranos for the first time. First of all, I'm just saying I'm amazed at how many people who I talk with have never seen The Sopranos. You're one of them. I was reading Miles McNutt's newsletter, Episodic Medium. He apparently has also not seen The Sopranos, from what I could tell. But it's a show. I'll point out that still
holds
a show.
Up.
Yeah, thank you. It's a show that still holds up. Like I actually did an entire rewatch like in the past year, and it's still excellent. And Wong is watching one of the best episodes of The Sopranos ever made, possibly the best episode of The Sopranos ever made. It's called Long-Term Parking. I thought it was pretty hilarious, by the way, that they don't show any images from The Sopranos, so I think they just didn't want to get the rights to it. They show the name of the show, the episode, paused on the TV. They have the theme song, but they didn't get any rights to the actual show itself. So little Easter egg about rights for you there is they were able to evoke the feeling of The Sopranos without actually showing any Sopranos. And then at that point, Madison spoils that episode of The Sopranos, and then Wong says Donnie Blaze will pay for this. Now, I want to ask you, Siddhant, as somebody who's never watched The Sopranos, like, are you familiar? Like, Madison drops some major freaking spoilers for The Sopranos in the course of this episode. And I guess I am curious, like, A, did you retain any of those spoilers? I purposely left it out of our opening clip. But also, more broadly speaking, what's the statute of limitations on spoilers for a show like The Sopranos, like where you can just drop them openly? So let's start with my first question. Like, did you retain any of the spoilers or remember anything that she said?
I don't remember the first one. I remember the second one she drops in the courtroom, I think. But I think that's one I vaguely knew, because if I'm not mistaken, like I had seen a reference to it when The Many Saints of Newark came out.
Because did you watch that movie?
No, I didn't, because I've only seen a couple of episodes of The Sopranos. Because if I'm not mistaken, it's like a character who dies who is then like, is he narrating the movie or something like that? Or am I completely wrong about this?
Yeah, in many cities of New York, yes, that's right.
Okay, okay, yeah. So I think I had sort of an idea because I had like
Yeah,
read that, oh, a character who's dead is the narrator for this.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, as much as I would have liked to have not known that, like again, like when did the show end? It's been a while, right?
2007, so it ended in
Oh,
2007. Yeah,
okay, yeah. Like I
so
was,
it's been 15 years since the end of The
yeah.
Sopranos. Yeah.
So I know about the ending of The Sopranos. I know like what happens in the end. I know how people are like divided over what it means. I'm intrigued by it because I like the imagery, and I want to be able to get to that ending. I want to take the journey and get to that ending and see how I feel about it. Um, but look, the Sopranos is such a big part of Western popular culture that I think after a while a spoiler like this is it's sort of like inevitable. It's shitty of Madison to have drunkenly dropped those spoilers knowing that Wong was you
Well,
know
yeah, she didn't know it was his first time watching,
yeah,
but yeah,
yeah,
you have to assume it might be your first time
yeah, yeah,
watching.
yeah.
And that this is the thing is Wong has held out on The Sopranos for 15 years, and then he like long term parking. That episode is like fifth, sixth season. It's like really close to the end of the show.
But here's the
Um,
thing, here's the thing.
so I can't imagine getting that far.
Yeah,
Literally, you're about to watch the episode, and
yeah,
then to get a spoiler dropped on you right there, like that sucks. You know?
yeah. What I'm wondering is like, how long has Wong had access to The Sopranos?
Mm.
Probably not very long because it wouldn't have been streaming like in Nepal until like 4 or 5 years ago,
Well,
probably.
first of all, he's had access for a long time
Yeah,
because
yeah,
he can just get DVDs and Blu-rays
that's true. I was
at
gonna
any time.
say
Yeah,
that's well. There's a larger conversation there, like import fees and all that. Like I'm speaking from like personal
he doesn't.
experience here.
He can teleport them with
Wait,
portals.
wait,
No?
wait. I was gonna say,
Okay,
I was gonna
okay,
say,
yeah,
like he did live in the U.S. for a bit as like
yeah.
the sorcerer supreme and all that. So he did have a bit of access. He did have access to it as well. Yeah. Um, but no, but like that brings up an interesting question. Would there be import fees if you portal something over?
I don't think so. I think it's like going to I'm in Seattle. I can drive to Portland and buy things
Right, right. But that's within
for
the
no
same
time.
country.
Well,
What are the
I'm saying there's when I go to Portland to buy something, I don't pay any sales tax on it, right? So if I'm
Mhm.
buying an iPhone, I don't need to pay hundreds of dollars sales tax. Now, technically, I'm supposed to pay what's called a use tax
Okay.
on anything that I am using in Seattle, but it's extremely difficult to enforce use
Okay.
taxes, right? So my guess is it's the same deal. Is like, yes, technically, Wong should be paying import fees on his Sopranos DVD / Blu-rays, but he's probably not doing it. Is my
Hmm.
guess. You know?
Mhm. Yeah. So the reason I'm saying all this is because I was like vaguely aware that there was a gangster show called The Sopranos at the time that it was airing because it wasn't like big in India at the time.
Mhm.
And I didn't really hear people talking about it until I came to the US for college in like 2009. And I think it was in 2010 that I watched like I want to say the first maybe 5 or 7 episodes. I didn't really retain much. I got busy and didn't end up watching much more. Um, but I would like to. Hint, hint, in case you're thinking of something to cover next.
Yes.
But back on track, yeah, like that sucks, Wong. I've had that happen to me. Like I have a friend who was lending me the DVD for Fight Club in high school, and he knew that I hadn't seen it yet, which is why he was lending me the DVD. He hands me the DVD and he says, "Oh, you know the blah 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 spoiler, right?" I'm like, I didn't know that. No. Like that's why you're giving this to me."
That's terrible. That's terrible. Well, the thing is, okay. First of all, I mean, long term parking is the name of the episode. Season 5, episode 12 of The Sopranos. It's, in my estimation, one of the greatest TV episodes of all time. It's
Okay.
just an incredible episode that, like, um, Madison says she cried for days afterward watching this episode, and
Mhm.
I won't say I cried days afterwards. That didn't happen to me, but like, it is an episode whose events reverberate to me till this day. Like it's still it's a really powerful episode. There's another spoiler that Madison drops later on in the episode. Those are arguably two of the biggest Soprano spoilers of all time. Between that and the ending, those are like the top 3 Soprano spoilers. So
Wow. Okay.
Madison has really bad spoiler etiquette, I think, is
Ugh.
the point that we're trying to make. And
Madison's cancelled.
yes. And it really sucks. Okay. Uh, so we also see that like Madison is transported to like all these different places on her way to Wong's lair,
Hmm.
right? And so there are there's theoretically like this hell lair. People are maybe like speculating that Mephisto might be at the place where she's at, and so
I'm
on.
leaving. I'm leaving. I'm
Yeah,
leaving. I can't do this. Not. I can't. I can't watch another Marvel show where we're gonna talk about Mephisto. I can't do it. I just, oh man, no, stop, please. We've been doing this since there has been Marvel TV. Like, he'll show up when he shows up. I'm
yeah.
sorry to be a bummer about this, but like, I think it's been like since episode like 1 or 2 of WandaVision. We've been
WandaVision.
like,
It's been over
it's
a year.
Mephisto, it's Mephisto, it's Mephisto. At this point, I think they might like knowingly be doing it.
Mhm. Also, want to point out that Donnie Blaze is very similar in name to Johnny Blaze, which
That's
is the name
true.
of Ghost Rider. So maybe it's a Ghost Rider vague reference. Anyway,
And
um,
speaking of HBO shows, Donnie Blaze is played by Reese Coiro, who also plays Billy Walsh, my man Billy Walsh on Entourage.
yes. Also, I believe he is married to Kat Coiro, who directed many of the episodes of She-Hulk season 1. So
Oh, okay, that makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah.
So then we cut to Jen in her house. She's wearing an oversized suit, which is very funny because I was like,
Hmm.
at first I was like, wow, they really did a bad job with the wardrobe in the show, and then it's like, oh, it's because she's going to expand into She-Hulk later, so it's nice that she like prepares. You don't see Bruce Banner preparing,
Yeah.
like he's going to expand, but it's nice that she
God,
thinks ahead. She's
what a what
obviously
a what a Mary Sue. She has foresight.
so. She says, "Oh, you're happy." She's looking at the camera. You're happy. I guess that's because Wong shows up in this episode. Everyone loves Wong. It's like giving the show Twitter armor for a week. Now, what's interesting about this statement is that it almost feels like I don't know what the production schedule of She-Hulk was. Based on the CG, it seems like maybe they're literally making this episode up until like 4 days ago. But I have to assume that the shows were written and produced weeks or months ago, right?
Hmm.
So taking that into account, it feels like they really anticipated a bunch of whiny baby men would get all bent out of shape about the fact that there's a She-Hulk, which accurately predicted, and then that like there would be like a lot of discourse around the show on Twitter, and like that the show might need Twitter armor, which I just think is interesting to kind of predict that you might need Twitter armor. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
like, like, and I do think to some degree the show is right in that there's people who have a politics of grievance online that they use to like attack the show in a very unfortunate and regressive way. Uh, that does an appearance from Wong help to stem that? I don't really think so, but it's just interesting that the show conceives of it in that way.
David, today on IGN, I published a review for the Olivia Wilde movie Don't Worry, Darling.
Mm-hmm.
And I scrolled down to the comments for a second, and like all the comments are about She-Hulk. And the thing is, like, IGN has a She-Hulk review up for the latest episode, so I don't know what's going on. So yeah, you need like I think Twitter armor is a good way to put it. It's not going to work as Twitter armor. I don't
Yes,
think anything
yes.
would at this point. But yeah, I think they knew going in what kind of response they would get.
The main plots of this episode are Wong wants a cease and desist put on Donnie Blaze because he learned a lot of secrets while training to be uh, a sorcerer, but like didn't pass the program. And it's funny to like think of these kind of ancillary characters who were part of the training but couldn't cut it. And then what
Hmm.
happens to those people? They become cut rate magicians who aren't very good and actually risk untangling the astral plane. So
And it's interesting that he still has his sling ring. You'd think that if you didn't pass, you didn't become like a full time sorcerer, you'd have to give that back, like turning in your gun and your badge.
yeah, but there's probably sling rings everywhere. I mean, I don't think they have good sling ring control, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, we need to
Um,
introduce some legislation for that.
that's 100%,
Yeah,
100%.
call your local congressman.
So that's one plot line. The other plot line is that Jen is trying to get a date. She's trying
Mhm.
to be on the MCU equivalent of Tinder called Matcher, I think it is,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to date as a highly successful woman in her 30s, which is a very challenging dating situation. At least as I've heard from the TikToks that I watch. I'm not actually in the market right now, but that is what I understand. So those are the two plots, and they kind of intersect. It's very sitcom-y, where like one plot kind of like distracts from the other plot, and vice versa. They don't really have too much of a connection this episode, like they did
Yeah.
in the first episode. Although she does get interrupted
Mm-hmm.
during her date by Wong at the end. Now, it does seem to me like this is probably what the structure of the show is going to be. Right, every week
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be a case. Um, and every week Jen's gonna deal with something in her personal life. There are tons of threads left dangling from previous weeks that we haven't addressed, like the attack on her from last week, not even touched upon. Renee Elise Goldsberry appeared last episode, don't even see her. Titania, like we get a hint of her and filing for trademark, violation this episode, but that's it. So
Yeah, I
it
thought I
really,
thought Titania was gonna be like the villain of this show, but it's been 4 episodes and she's been in it for like a minute.
yeah, literally like less than 5 minutes. So the show is really stretching things out, I
Yeah.
think, is what's clear. So
Yes, but I was delighted by just everything in this episode. Like, the A and the B plot don't really connect; they just happen to intersect at one point. Um, which is a bit of a downer after like last week where she turned to the camera and she's like bringing the A and B plot together. Nice. Doesn't have the luxury of doing that this time, but I like the the different dates that she goes on and the different kinds of people that she meets. And yeah, it's very standard, like Twitter thread about dating kind of thing. But some of it is very specific to She-Hulk. Like the first guy she goes on a date with, by the way, the former WWE wrestler David Otunga. He shows off about how much he can bench and how much he can lift because he seems to be insecure in front of She-Hulk. And then like there's another guy who I think just wants to like test out whether or not she's indestructible.
right. It is sad that she gets a lot more attention as She-Hulk than as her normal self, and
Yeah.
then as her human self, I should say. Don't want to be discriminatory of different superhero forms, and then the guy who she is with, who's like is the nicest of them all, is only interested in her when she is She-Hulk form. Like when she's normal, or sorry, in her human sized body the next day, he's like, "Oh, who are you?" Like doesn't, and then like leaves immediately.
And he's a
And I
major
think
dick about it.
exactly, and I think it's probably speaks to one of the show's themes of the idea that She-Hulk as a persona and as a physical body can be commodified by people, and
Hmm.
it's probably like a commentary on how women in our society are commodified. Um, the other thing that's interesting about this episode is in the comics, She-Hulk is a member of the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, and goes on like all these adventures with them, right? And they don't have that infrastructure in this episode. I mean, they have the Avengers, but she's not part of them.
Hmm.
It's largely going to be single female lawyer slash Ally McBeal style show, and so the construct they seem to have settled on for her to have kind of wacky adventures is, hey, maybe people from the MCU show up and they need to have their cases taken care of by her. And because it's weird that Wong kind of calls her, like, needs her help to deal with the little flying devil things, right? Like, it's like, shouldn't he have other resources instead of his lawyer? But I guess she happens to be there. And maybe that's what structure the show's going to take, is like they want She-Hulk to go on like wacky adventures, right? But she's still a lawyer primarily, and so the way they're going to do it is through her clients, probably. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
I'm fine
Um,
with that. I don't want like another Avenger. I don't want another character whose show is, going to be a platform for them to join some bigger group. And eventually it's probably going to happen. But for
yeah,
now, it's like, all right, she's in the grand scheme of the MCU, she is basically an ancillary character who has gotten her own show. And yeah, she has some of the media spotlight, but she doesn't clearly doesn't want to be an Avenger and just wants to be a lawyer, and I think that's fine.
Yeah, yeah. But I am curious, like, if all these things are going to tie together in a satisfying way, like the people who attacked her, and this copyright, this trademark infringement,
Hmm.
and Renee Elise Goldsberry's character, and whether Bruce Banner, like what Bruce Banner is up to in space. Like all these things are being introduced, and it feels like the show is just kind of like, hey, we're just chilling. It doesn't. We're
Yep.
not in a hurry to get anywhere, and I think
Mhm.
that's completely fine. Um,
And
so
one thing I'm hoping doesn't happen is this week Wong brings up, oh, if Donnie Blaze does this, that, and the other, it unravels, XYZ. And it seems like it's some kind of reference, like, multiverses, like every other Marvel show at this point. But like, I hope that doesn't go anywhere. I agree with you that things you mentioned should have
yeah,
like resolutions and tie together. I do not want them to follow this one thread. I would be fine if this has nothing to do with the multiverse stuff.
I would agree. Um, Let me ask you a personal question,
Oh
Siddhant.
no.
Have you used Tinder before? I have
Yeah.
never
Oh yeah.
used Tinder because I kind of went off the market right around the time that Tinder
Mhm.
became a big deal. So I'm curious, like, if you feel that this episode captures the. I have used dating apps and I found them
Mhm.
very dehumanizing and demoralizing to use in general. And I'm curious if you found that uh, the show's depiction of the modern dating scene for 30 somethings to be accurate.
So I'm 30 and I haven't used a dating app in 4.5, 5 years because I haven't been single in that long. But that date that she goes on with the guy who only seems interested in talking about himself, and has basically only shown up for that purpose. Like I've been on that date. I've been like Jen in that scenario
Mm-hmm.
where you show up and the other person
You've
just
been on
wants.
both sides probably, so no, I'm just joking.
Excuse me.
I'm
All
just
right, you
joking.
can host this podcast on your own from now on. Wow. All right, now I know what you really think of me.
I kid,
All right,
Siddhant.
so sorry, you want me to speak?
Yes,
You want
please
me to
go ahead.
speak? Just confirming.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Indeed, indeed. I'm David Chen. No, I forgot what I was saying. God damn it.
You've been on dates where like the
Yeah, yeah,
person
yeah.
doesn't ask anything about you. Yeah.
Where it's like, look, honestly, like I would say
I
most of the dates that I've been on through dating apps have not been good, but that's also, I guess, just the nature of like, they haven't been like disastrous dates, but it's like, you go on dates, you don't connect with people. Sometimes things are awkward, whatever. Like I've been on a few good ones, but um, like you'll find that most of the horror stories tend to come from women. So this is probably like, as much as I called it like, a Twitter thread depiction, like those Twitter threads are also like, based in
yeah.
reality to some degree.
It does seem to be mostly men, in these situations that don't ask any questions and talk only about themselves. That
Yeah.
seems to be the stereotype.
Yeah, and
Um,
you're lumping me in with them. I feel like,
no,
yeah.
I'm saying men in general, Saddam, including myself, Me, I'm a very inquisitive person. I
Uh-huh.
would never dream of just like it's probably the opposite problem. I'd ask too many questions.
Hmm.
But I
Which
understand
which
that that's not usually the case.
which does bring to mind like the guy that she has the seemingly good date with. Like, is what I'm wondering is, and I don't think this is something the show will answer, and that's completely fine. Is he like, is everything he's doing and saying genuine, and then he suddenly loses interest and goes cold when he sees, the real Jen? Or is that just like his game? Like that he
Well,
knows, oh,
first of all,
women
his
like to be asked questions. Let me do
yeah.
that and get
Well,
into
first of
bed
all,
with her.
he barely did anything positive before she was really into him. He just
Yeah.
wasn't a complete asshole.
Yeah.
So that showed like how low the standards have gotten. But then he was reading that book by Roxane Gay. But I think it's to show that yes, it was genuine, but that like even despite that, men can still compartmentalize and make choices that on their surface and not even on the surface, just in reality, are very cold and calculating. That they're like he's into her for this reason
Hmm.
because she satisfies some kind of fetish or some kind of interest that he has in that
Mm-hmm.
form, and serves no other purpose for him, right? And that's
Yeah.
it's a reminder of even the nicest guy can have that kind of element of coldness to them. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, any other thoughts on the episode, Siddhant Adlaka?
Um, Nikki, that's her name. The paralegal.
Yes.
She's Marvel queer.
What does that mean?
As in like there's like an offhanded reference that, oh, maybe she might possibly be gay and we can talk about it in the press. And like I think she says something like, oh, hetero dating life is so, I think she uses the
hmm
word like hetero dating. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe she's queer. So I don't know if that's going to go anywhere, but it feels like a very Marvel thing to do. So we'll see what happens.
There is this trend online, like going on right now in TV and films, of creators of TV shows and actors from TV shows saying, "Oh yeah, the character I play is queer or bi or gay or
Mm-hmm.
whatever." Um,
Because I believe the
well,
actress is bi.
right. While the show or the movie does virtually nothing to actually depict what a character with that with those characteristics would actually be, um, and there's many economic reasons why the show would choose not to do
Yeah.
this. To make it more palatable for international audiences, to make it more palatable for domestic audiences, uh, and so it's kind of their way of having their cake and eating it too, in the sense that they can say, "Oh, this is representation," while not actually doing the challenging work that true representation might take.
Yeah.
Uh, did I do a good job of summarizing it there?
Thank you
Um,
for doing that so that I didn't come off as like overly dismissive. You really saved me there. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, because you were not dismissing the idea of a character being bi. You're dismissing the idea of a character being bi offhandedly.
Yeah,
Which is
lip
how.
service. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, those are our thoughts and reactions for She-Hulk season 1, episode 4. Is this really? Yep. Go ahead.
Hold on. We spent so much time talking about The Sopranos. You're not going to give me any time to talk about This Is Us, the other show that Wongers was watching?
Yeah. So he switches from The Sopranos to This Is Us, which is actually like a really big tonal shift, I
Uh
would
huh.
say. Right. But yes, tell us about your love of This Is Us, Siddhant.
I love This Is Us. Thank you for listening.
It's a show you would wholeheartedly recommend. It sounds like, yes?
Absolutely. One of my all time favorites. The only show that I can safely say has genuinely impacted my outlook on life. And it's also really
Wow.
funny. Really, really funny.
Okay. Well, those are our thoughts on She-Hulk episode 4. Is this not real magic? You can find more episodes of this podcast at podcast.decodingtv.com. And you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/decodingtv. Email us at decodingtv@gmail.com and support this podcast at decodingtv.com. Siddhant, where can people find your work on the internet?
I'm on Twitter at Siddhant Adlaka, which is my name.
All right. And we'll see you next week for another discussion of She-Hulk, this time season 1, episode 5. Siddhant's going to be traveling next week, so there's going to be no main topic. We're just going to dive right into the episode, and we'll see how it goes. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you later.